Okay, good morning, guys, and thanks so much for joining us again for another edition of Ask the SCSA. So with the reopening plan for the province well underway, the SCSA is beginning to start auditing again, but we're doing it remotely. So the process has changed a bit, but with that said, we thought we would dedicate a few episodes of the Tuesday Ask the SCSA to the audit process itself. As anyone who's been through the audit process can attest to, it's comprehensive and it would be difficult to cover in thoroughly in an hour. So we're going to break it up with a few sections today and a few sections next week. But today, Kara is going to present on the first 4 sections of the audit tool. Before we get into the meat of today's show, though, we'll do a quick round around the table and introduce our guests. So maybe we'll start with Kara, our presenter.
Thanks, Laura. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kara Bildfeld. I am a safety advisor out of the Saskatoon office, and I handle the Melfort, Nipawin, Tisdale, Hudson Bay region. I've been with the SCSA for almost 2 years now. Yeah.
Thanks, Kara. Steve?
Hi, Steve Waldbar, safety advisor out of the Regina office. If you're south of the number 1, there's a good chance you're in my region.
Awesome. And Adam?
Hi, everyone. My name's Adam Drummond, and I am a trainer in Regina.
Awesome. And if you don't know me, my name is Laura. I am also an advisor out of the Regina office. So I guess without further ado, before we go into the presentation, I should mention, if it's the first time you're joining us on Zoom, we just ask that you put your questions into the Q&A feature on Zoom. If we have any links or anything we'd like to share, we will post those in the chat feature. And as well, this is broadcasting live on Facebook, and someone is monitoring that for questions as well. So you can get to us a few different ways, and we will try to get to everyone's questions today. Kara, take it away.
Thanks, Laura. Okay, so as Laura mentioned, we're going to kind of break down the audit tool over the next several weeks. So we'll start with, how do I click through here? There we go. Okay, so section 1 is going to be your health and safety policy. Section 2, we're going to go over hazard assessments. Section 3, safe work practices, and section 4, safe job procedures. So as in the audit tool, we want to see legislation, because that's going to be kind of our bare minimum. As everybody knows, we have to do everything that legislation says. If we want to go above and beyond that, that's totally fine, but this is the bare minimum that everyone has to adhere to. So for section 1, health and safety policy, so in the occupational health and safety regulations, section 22 covers your occupational health and safety program. And as you can see, the letters jump around a little bit, but we are just going to cover what is required in your health and safety policy. So that's why we don't have all the letters in there. So 22.1, subsection 2, an occupational health and safety program required by section 13 of the Act must include, so a statement of the employer's policy with respect to the protection and maintenance of the health and safety of the workers, a statement of the responsibilities of the employer, the supervisors, and the workers, and then a procedure to review and, where necessary, revise the occupational health and safety program at intervals that are not greater than 3 years, and whenever there is a change of circumstance that may affect the health and safety of workers. So that's the legislation that's applicable to your health and safety policy. And here we just have an example of a health and safety policy. So if you go to our website, www.scsaonline.ca, and go to the resources tab, you can find yourself a copy of the audit tool, which is going to be a really good resource for your company because it's going to go through everything that you need pertaining to the audit, as well as it has guidelines that kind of break that down a little bit further. So basically for 1.1, we want to see a health and safety policy that is signed by the president or local senior management. So that's right there. Mr. Paul Newman has signed this health and safety policy for us. 1.2 includes management's commitment to provide a safe and healthy work environment. So we have that right there. Okay, management is committed to provide and maintain a safe and healthy work environment. So that is for 1.2. 1.3, we have recognizes the rights of the workers to work in a safe and healthy work environment. So we're going to have that in there as management's commitment, as well as the workers' rights. So that's that highlighted section there. 1.4 asks that it is current and dated. So as you can see, we had this one signed March 20th of 2020. 1.5, oh, I went too fast there. 1.5 is it reviewed annually by management? So if you're going for a baseline audit, that's going to be an NA question, but we want to make sure that management is going over that policy at least annually to make sure that there's no changes that need to be made. And you can use these supplemental signature lines underneath to do that. 1.6, is it posted? So that's going to be an observational for COR. When the auditor comes out, they're going to want to see that this health and safety policy is posted in a conspicuous place that all workers have access to. 1.7 addresses accountability and responsibility for health and safety of all workplace parties. We're going to dive into that a little bit more in the next slide. But as you can see from the last highlighted line, we have employees at every level, including management, are responsible and accountable for the XYZ construction overall safety initiative. So it is everyone's responsibility to make sure that people are healthy and safe at work. Next thing, 1.8, so expresses a commitment to work in a spirit of consultation and cooperation with the workers. So we have that there. So we want to make sure that's included. And then 1.9 on the audit tool is it understood by workers? So that's going to be an interview question. The auditor is going to sit down with the workers, the supervisors, the managers individually and ask them about the safety policy. So it should be something that everybody at the company is familiar with. So this is just kind of a breakdown. Manager or owner shall, supervisor, foreman, superintendent. You can put a safety person in there if you want. You can put your occupational health committee if you want. Kind of depends on the size of your company and how much you want to get into this, but we would like to see management or owner, supervisor or foreman, and then worker. What are the responsibility of each category of worker? So everybody knows what they're responsible for. So that's it for the health and safety policy. Section 2, hazard assessment, analysis, and control. So again, we're going to dive a little bit into the legislation first. So we're still in regulation, section 22, the occupational health and safety program. So 22.1 subject, again to subsection 2, your health and safety program is required to have. So we're going to identify existing and potential risks or hazards to the health and safety of the workers at the place of employment, and the means, including any procedures to respond to an emergency that will be taken to reduce, eliminate, or control those risks. So that is what our hazard assessment is for. Here's an example of a hazard assessment policy. So in 2.1, are written hazard assessments conducted as required? Basically, you're going to have a frequency within your policy, and then all the workers, supervisors, management, whoever is going to be involved in that needs to do those as per the frequency set out in the policy. Okay, so this one says complete a new hazard assessment of each work site at the start of the job and ongoing as needed. So that's going to be company specific. Depending on what kind of work you're doing, depending on what kind of hazards you're dealing with, you're going to come up with a frequency for your company. If you have any trouble with this at all, you can always reach out to the advisory team. We'll be more than happy to help. 2.2, does the employer use an ongoing hazard assessment process? So as you can see in our policy, we have a frequency and it says ongoing as needed. You're going to specify in your policy how often ongoing is going to be. Maybe it's going to be daily, maybe it's going to be twice a day, maybe it's going to be once a week. Again, it depends on the kind of work that you're doing and the risks and hazards that you're exposed to. 2.3, are appropriate personnel involved in the hazard assessment process? So this is really important too. We want to make sure that everyone's involved in this. It's not just the people who are on site every day. If a supervisor comes onto a new site, they should either be doing a hazard assessment or signing off on the hazard assessment that's already been done for the day, or whatever frequency that you decide. And we are going to jump around a little bit. So I'm going to skip to 2.9 because the other points we're going to cover in the next slides coming up. 2.9, are appropriate personnel involved and informed of the control strategies? So again, everyone should be involved in that hazard assessment process. Even if you're just coming on site for a short amount of time, you should still read through the hazard assessment, sign off on it, add anything that you feel needs to be added. 2.10, Does the company have a process for evaluating and monitoring subcontractors? If you don't use subcontractors, this is going to be an NA, but your subcontractors should be held to the same standard as the workers. If they're coming onto site, they're working under your safety program, maybe they have their own safety program, that's totally fine too, but you should have a way to monitor and make sure that they're doing everything that they say that they're going to do as well, as a prime. Does management support the ongoing application of the hazard assessment process? So this can include reviewing and signing the hazard assessments, but again, if that upper management is going to be on site, they should be signing off or completing hazard assessments themselves as well. Okay, so in our policy it says supervisors or lead hands are expected to complete the hazard assessment, excuse me, ensuring its accuracy, enforcing the controls listed, as well as any applicable company policies and any legislative requirements. So again, your legislative requirements as far as the owner or manager, the supervisor, and the workers are all different. You can look that up in legislation as well under duties of the employer, duties of the supervisor, duties of the worker, and that'll all be laid out for you. So next we have an example of a hazard assessment that we offer at the SCSA. You can buy these HAB books from the admin girls at the front. But we're just going to go through a couple more points. So 2.4 on the audit tool says are hazards identified. So we're going to put all of our hazards in this column here. So what is the hazard that you're working with? Make sure that you're specific. Next, we're going to give it a priority. So you can see in this red box, we have a priority for severity and probability. So you're going to put a letter and number corresponding to the risk that you're dealing with in that first column. Okay, so if you're working at heights, it would probably be something like a 2A or a 2B. Whereas if you're just doing housekeeping, that's going to be a lower score because that's not something that needs to be corrected right away. Per se, we want to give them a priority rating so we know when to deal with them and what needs to be done. Next, excuse me, 2.8 are controls implemented in a timely manner. This last column is where you're gonna make sure that those are getting done properly. And what I always say to companies is it's a good idea to put a date and time in there, just because if something were to happen, if you were to implement a control for a hazard on site, and then you have another trade or someone else on site and they come and they have to remove that for some work that they have to do, and then there's an incident, you can say, this is the date and time that I took care of this hazard, and then you're covered liably there. 2.6 asks that we have a critical task list. So basically the definition of a critical task is a particular task or job that has a high risk of injury. A task that is not performed on a regular basis, or a task that has been known to cause or could have caused incidents in the past. So if you're doing something that is high risk of injury, if you have a task that you're not doing very often, or something that is known to cause incidents in the past, we want to make sure that that's on that critical task list. Okay, so it doesn't have to be anything fancy. As you can see here, we just have them listed. But these are the tasks that we are going to do on this job site that maybe have a high risk of injury or we maybe don't do very often. So and a lot of these are going to jump back and forth between sections. So when we go into the safe job procedure section, we're going to see our critical task list again. Okay, so not everything's covered just in one section. Sometimes they overlap. And again, as you can see, we just need a list to say what your critical tasks are. Next, we're going to move into safe work practices. So in the regulation section 22 still, we have our health and safety program. So 22.1G says a plan for training workers and supervisors in safe work practices and procedures, including any procedures, plans, policies, or programs that the employer is required to develop pursuant to the Act or any regulations made pursuant to the Act that apply to the work of the workers and supervisors. That is a big mouthful, but basically it says that we want to see a practice or procedure for the tasks that you're doing on the job site. Okay, you don't necessarily have to have both, and the difference between them, a safe work practice is a do's and don'ts. So it's going to say things like always do this, ensure this is done, don't ever do this, etc. And I'm going to show you an example here right away. So again, your safe work practice is a general do's and don'ts of a specific task or operation. So these are some of the tasks that we have safe work practices for. Your safe work practices should be readily available to each worker on every site that the employer is working on. So it's important that the workers have access to these practices and procedures in case they need to review them, and you should be reviewing them at least annually with your workforce as well. You can use something like this. This is available on our website as well. So you would list your practices here. You would say when they were developed and by whom, and then you can use this as a review. So you'll be going over practices and procedures at your toolbox talks and safety meetings. And then if you're using this sheet, I find it really helpful. I can see which ones we've already gone over. If there's something that we need to go over, then I can check it off the list. It's an easy kind of quick glance at where we are. So this is an example of a safe work practice. So you can see here we have our required PPE, and that's going to be filled out by the company. But as you can see here, we have must, okay, ensure. So this is a do's. We don't have any don'ts for this one, but that's fine. And then as you can see, oh, I clicked forward too fast. So on the review sheet, this one doesn't say developed by, so we would use that review sheet to make sure that we know who developed this and when it was developed and when we're reviewing it. On the safe job procedure, I'm going to show you a different way to do that. So we'll jump into procedures now. So the legislation is the same for practices and procedures, so I won't read that over again. Basically, we want to have a practice and or a procedure for each task that we're going to be completing on the job site. So your safe job procedure is a step-by-step written procedure on how to perform a task or operation. So we're going to have job steps in the procedure, step 1, step 2, step 3, etc. Whereas with the practice, we had always do this, never do that, things like that. So that's how those are different. And as you can see from our list here, we have confined space twice. So again, you can have a safe work practice and a safe job procedure for a task. That's totally fine. But everything on your critical task list, we want to make sure that we have a procedure for. If you have a practice, like I said, that's totally fine, but we want to make sure that we have a procedure as well. And again, your safe work procedures should be readily available to each worker on every site that the employees may be working on. You can do this with having a copy of the health and safety manual, like a physical copy with each work truck. You can make sure that the employees have access to your health and safety program or manual on their phones. That's fine too. And again, we have an annual review. So you'll put the name of the procedure, when it was developed and by whom, and then when you're reviewing those. So different from the safe work practice, this one has it at the top, which is also fine. But when you're reviewing those, you only have one line. That's where the review sheet comes in really handy, because you can have multiple years on there and then keep track of those procedures on that review sheet as opposed to marking these up every year. Excuse me. And as you can see, we have job steps. So step 1, step 2, step 3, it's going to go through everything that you need to do to make sure that you're performing that task safely and properly. And that's the end of sections 1 to 4. So if you still have questions, if you're confused about anything, if your audit's coming up and you need help, reach out to advisory services. We have a wealth of knowledge and resources to share with our members as well as non-members. You can call our office at 306-525-0175 to request an advisor to phone or video call you or email. You can also go to our website, which I will take you to really quickly. Oops. Maybe. So is that showing up my panelists?
Just the presentation, Kara. That's all I see. Yeah.
Okay, it might be lagging a little bit.
That's okay.
Let's close this and then. I'm clearly not very technologically advanced today.
Oh, it's not you, Kara, it's technology.
Okay, can you guys see the website now?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so if you need to reach out to an advisor, you can go to the contact right here, go to contact us. That will take you to an email form, basically, which you'll fill out, and then someone from our office will get back to you. If you can also mouse over this without clicking anything, kind of go down. If you know you're in the Saskatoon region, you can click Saskatoon office. And then our team is going to show up here. So if you're in Melfort, Nipawin, and Tisdale, I'm going to be your advisor. So you can just click my name and it'll open up to generate an email, and then that'll come straight to me. The other thing I wanted to show you is if you go to our resources tab right here, and then you go down to documents, forms, and legislation, you can click that. And again, we have a whole bunch of resources here for anybody that wants to use them. You can see our safe job procedures right here. That's going to be that review sheet that I showed you during the presentation. So feel free to download that and use it. The one thing I did want to show you though is if you scroll down to COR Internal Audit Tool, you can click on that, and then the audit tool itself will come up. So if you're wondering about anything within the audit, go to, excuse me, section 1. Okay, so we have recognizes the right of the workers to work in a safe and healthy work environment, 1.3. Okay, so that's there. And then if you want further explanation on what that means, you can scroll up one page and then the guidelines are here. So there'll be a corresponding number with an explanation for each point on the audit tool. And I think that's about it for me.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, so, and I think just to stress too, what Kara mentioned throughout the presentation was that advisory services is here. So if you don't already have an advisor, even if you're in the core process already and you know you've been doing externals, you can get a hold of us and we'll assign one to you. We already have quite a few questions coming in about the audits, so maybe we'll kind of roll into that right away. So the first question here is about subcontractors during the audit. So what role do they play in the audit, and are they part of the interviews and observations during an audit? Maybe Steve.
Oh,
Or Adam, whoever.
Steve, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so subcontractors, think of them as your workers on your job site. So when it comes to the interview process and they're calculating the percentages of workers to managers, the subcontractors will be considered workers in the audit process.
Also, I just want to make mention, our auditors at SCSA, when they come out to do an external audit, we'll look for a sub and grab them and say, let's do an interview, because they're part of your system. If you guys are doing your internal audits, one of the things I like to tell you is grab one of your subs, because we do it, so you might as well be doing it as well.
Yes, 100%. So, and just to sort of reiterate what they'd said there, subcontractors, 100%, they're considered your employees as far as the audit goes. And this is even true for like COR as well. So like COR is for 10 or less employees. That includes some contractors. So some companies I know that, you know, they don't think that, but it does. We include your subcontractors in there as well. So the next question is, someone told me that I need a procedure for all the high-risk equipment in my company. That's the whole question. So does he need a procedure for high-risk equipment in his company?
Your high-risk equipment is going to be under your critical task list. So yes, we would like to see a procedure for each of those tasks, especially if they're going to be high-risk equipment.
Yeah. And like I stress with a lot of companies too, in reality, you should have a procedure for every job that you do. That's like the goal. I know it'll be hard and it can take some time, but the goal is to have a written procedure for everything that you do. The next one is, and Kara, I know you covered this, but maybe you could reiterate, do you have to review all the practices and procedures every year?
Sorry, I couldn't get my mute shut off. Yes, we would like to see that you review all the practices and procedures every year. If you're making an effort and you've gone through your critical task list, you've gone through the majority of them, you're making an effort, then that's probably going to be okay to the auditors. If it looks like you haven't gone through any, or maybe just a couple, then that's probably not going to appease the audit tool. But like I said, if you have hundreds and you can't get to all of them in a year and there's only a few left over, then yes, that's fine. But definitely go through your critical task list, all of your procedures. That's what we'd like to see.
100%, because anything can
Just-
change, right? Maybe you got new tools or something like that. Sorry, Steve?
Also, it doesn't have to be just one person doing the review either, right? You can have different people in your company doing the review. It's really good to have workers involved, managers involved. Everyone's got a different perspective. So when you're reviewing this stuff, take a look at what you're actually reviewing. It might be better to have one person reviewing this stuff that happens more out in the field, and some person that, if it happens more in the office or the shop, somebody else should be reviewing that anyways. Just because they're doing it more.
Definitely, yeah. Just to kind of piggyback on what Steve said there. If you have procedures for a plant, and then you have procedures for a site, and then you have procedures for an office, definitely not all of the employees have to go through all of the procedures every single year. The office employees should be going through the practices and procedures that are pertinent to them, and then as well for the the site staff and the plant staff, if applicable.
Awesome. Those are great answers, you guys. And that sort of ties into another question that came up here is, can I have my workers develop the practices and procedures? And the answer is yes, and that's honestly the best way. Workers should be involved in the safety program, and that's a really good way of getting them involved, is having them develop them and review them. So the next question we have is, can we use generic practices and procedures that we find online?
I would say as a base, you can use, sorry, Steve, I probably cut you off there. Download them, review them, add to them as you need to, make them specific to your company and the task that you're doing. But to get a little bit of help off the internet, yeah, that's totally fine. But I would, again, tailor them to the work that you're doing. I wouldn't just grab 10 generic procedures off the internet and throw them in my safety manual. Make sure that you're reviewing them with the workers to make sure that those steps and those do's and don'ts are applicable to what you're doing.
Yes, 100%. It's easy. Yeah, like Kara said, you want to start online and maybe find a starting point for your procedures, but through the audit, like where we read those procedures, and then we, through the observations, make sure that that's what's actually happening, right? So it's easy to find them online and throw them in your manual, but if that's not actually what you're doing, then it's really just not going to work, right? So make sure that they're specific to your work. Another question is, can someone help me build these documents?
Absolutely. That's exactly what we're here for as advisors, is to help you through this process, and any of the questions that you have, definitely reach out to us for sure, and we can help you step by step. If you got any questions, if you're just starting and don't know anything, we're here for you. If you're just trying to tweak an existing manual, we're here for you. So yes.
Thank you, Steve. Sorry, I got lots of questions coming in here. So is there training to help me with developing this? So I guess talking just about the policies and practices and procedures, is there any training that we have to help? Adam?
Oh, training questions. Sure we do. We got tons of classes. That's what we're here for, is to help you build manuals, give you ideas. You take an auditor class with us, and that's a huge help because you start seeing all the things that is required in your manual. So that's going to be a huge step. Your advisors are going to help you throughout your whole steps of developing these as well. So they're trainers as well. They're more one-on-one with you guys. So take advantage of those services from the advisors and us as trainers to learn a little bit on how to develop these.
Thanks so much, Adam. And just to piggyback off that, another question just came in about the fee for our services. Does anybody want to explain how that works?
I can touch on the fee for classes. All you members that are watching this, you guys have a very discounted rate for being a member. The classes are $50 or $100, depending if you're dealing with 1 or 2 day classes. But that's the fee that we charge just to take the training, which is a very discounted training fee from wherever else you might go.
Awesome. And maybe one of the advisors can explain our services.
Yeah, sure. So all of the services that we offer as advisors are free of charge. So if a member company calls me and says, hey, I'm starting from scratch, I need a manual, we're going to ask that you take that training that Adam mentioned just to make sure that you know the ins and outs of what needs to be in there and why. And then somebody from the advisory services team will come out, help you build a manual that's free of charge. When we come to site to do hazard assessments, site inspections, etc., free of charge.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kara. Let's see. So the next question that came in is, I pay a safety lady. Is this something that I can leave to her, or do I have to be part of it?
Can you repeat that?
So this person says that they pay a safety lady. And is this something that they can leave to her to do, or do they have to be part of it?
Well, you're certainly welcome to have definitely a safety professional in your organization. We definitely do training for NCSO and HSA, and highly recommended to have someone like that in your company to help with your safety program. But to just hire somebody and then forget about safety, no. Like everybody's always responsible for safety within your organization. The hiring of a safety person just helps everybody be better informed as to the safety in your company.
I'm going to piggyback on Steve's answer as well. In the audit tool, there's a couple sections that ask for management's involvement, as well as on the, which we'll go through in the following weeks, the coming weeks rather, are workers and supervisors involved in the inspection process. So you need to have people at every level of the organization involved in safety. It's a culture, that's how it works. And we're going to ask you for those on the audit tool as well.
100%. Thanks, Kara. That's a really good point, and you as well, Steve. It's never ever the answer to hire somebody and then wash your hands of it, right? So you always have to, everybody in the company plays a part. Sorry, let's see here. So what is the recommended processes for reviewing practices and procedures? Could we review them at toolbox meetings?
Absolutely, that's a wonderful thing to do at a toolbox meeting. Pick a practice or a procedure, maybe a task that you're planning on doing in the coming week or that day. Go over the procedure with all the workers on site, and then you can mark that off on your review tool that you went over it during the toolbox talk on, say, June 16th of 2020, and then you know that one's covered.
Yep, absolutely. That's the easiest way too, to just do it in your day-to-day work, as opposed to making a big special event just for reviewing practices and procedures.
You can also like invite your workers to do that review as part of that toolbox talk, because the boots on the ground people that are doing that job, they might actually have an offer to say, you know what, this isn't working for us this way. It's not just about listening to what the procedure is, it's about maybe tweaking it during that moment. So
yeah, absolutely. Can I pay a trainer to build my safety book?
No, not us as trainers. No, no, you're not going to be paying anybody in general with SCSA to build I'm guessing what you mean by safety book is your manual, but your advisors are there to help you throughout that entire process. They have things already done, guidelines, help you throughout the whole process. And like it was mentioned before, that is not a cost that we charge. They don't do it for you. I just want to make that quite clear. They don't say, okay, give me all your paperwork and I'll just get her done for you. They want you to work at it as well, and they're there for the whole resources. And remember, the responsibility is the employer's full responsibility of the health and safety program, and then everybody underneath it. So it's way more beneficial, instead of just paying somebody to do it for you, that you do it yourself, because you need to know what is in that book anyways. So you might as well just help or work with your advisor and have it built.
That's an awesome point. Thanks so much, Adam. So the next question is a really simple one. Am I a member? So who are our members?
Our members are companies who pay into the B rate codes of WCB. So B11, B12, B13, construction trades, residential construction, and commercial industrial construction. You should have a rate on the paperwork that you're getting from WCB, a rate code. So if you have a B1104, let's say, you are a member of the SCSA.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, if you're in construction of any kind, it's a really good chance that you're a member. But yeah, the easiest way is to know what letter code you have from WCB. And if you really have no idea, just give us a call and we can let you know. So the next one is, I'm needing to take the safety auditor course. How does the online auditor course work? And how does it differ from the in-class course?
Ooh, okay, so our auditor course is being offered, and it is now on Zoom. How is it different? Really, as far as material, activities, and what we do, all exactly the same. The only difference is you get to do it from your own home or business over using this platform, Zoom. Other than that, it's still a 2-day course. We still audit a company that we created, Montsask. You go through documentation, observations, interviews, everything stays the same. You do have group activities where we do split you off into your own rooms when you're using Zoom. So everything is pretty much the same except for you're on your computer.
Awesome, thanks, Adam. So the next question is, can you train my supervisors to make this work on site? Any idea how much it might cost? So I guess he's sort of asking is, I mean, if SCSA can train the supervisors to make the program work on site, and how much it might cost to build a safety program. Does anybody want to take that?
Maybe I might not be understanding the whole question, but let me answer about supervisors and training. Absolutely, we can help them. We can train your supervisors. If you're a company that's going for COR, COR, you're going to have your supervisors take some sort of supervisor training. Come see us. We teach Leadership for Safety Excellence, LSE, and that gives your supervisors toolbox talks, training, investigations, and worksite inspection training, plus a little bit here and there throughout the 2-day course. And that gives them a lot of information to help with your program and to follow the core rules. I hope that answers it.
Yeah, I think so. Sorry, Steve, go ahead.
I was gonna say, just to go a little further with that LSE, a question that always gets brought up is do I actually need my proficiencies for that? Well, technically, you only need one person with proficiencies when it comes to the COR, but if you decide that somebody else needs a proficiency and it's past that 8-month window, they're gonna have to take the whole course over again. I mean, you're always needing to write that stuff anyways, whether you're doing a meeting or something. So just invite them to do it, get the proficiencies out of the way, and then you're covered. So, and yeah, and that LSE is really a good program for your supervisors for sure.
That's a really great point too, Steve. I've had a few companies that have unfortunately had to retake the course just because they didn't do it in that 8 months. And I always recommend just do it, just get it done, and then it's done and you don't have to do it again. So the next question coming in is, I hire trades to build my houses. Do I need a safety program thing?
Yes, you do need a safety program. It's a really good idea to have it in place, ready to go. That way, if you hire a subcontractor that maybe hasn't had their manual developed or doesn't have a program that they're working under, you can orientate them to work under your safety program, and then you make sure that everything that is required in your program is being met by not only your employees, but by your subcontractors as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to also just make mention, in a scenario like that, if you're hiring people on your site, you might be falling under prime contractor. And there's some information in this book, 3 pages worth of what prime contractors are. So just, if you're not sure what a prime is, come and join our prime contractor class or contractor class. We talk about primes. It just sounds like that might be the situation there where your health and safety program is got to be on site. So
Yeah. And if you are a prime contractor, there's quite a bit of responsibility that comes along with that. So definitely give us a call if you need some help or want some advice, or if you'd like to join a class and learn a bit more about that.
And just going a little bit further, so you have all these trades on site, and we were just talking about if they don't have their safety program, they're onto yours. Well, let's say everybody on site every sub-trade has their own safety program. You still need to get together and make sure you're all on the same page. You know, you should still have a common muster point, things like that, emergency response plan. Otherwise, you know, they could have a policy, you could have a policy, and you all meet minimum ledge, but you're not quite on the same page as what to happen in an emergency.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the next question here is, I only have 2 workers. Will COR work for me?
No, if you have 9 or fewer employees, you're gonna go COR, which is our small employer certificate of recognition. The COR and the COR Audit tools are very similar. So a lot of the documentation is gonna be exactly the same. Just with the smaller companies, we don't come out and do the interviews and the site observations.
Now, that being said, there are companies with fewer than 9 that could do COR, like that's an option, but we have that small employer program for that reason, because it can be a little bit daunting for small companies to do the COR. So we have some adjustments for the small employer situation. So so the next one is about critical tasks. So for the critical task list question on the audit tool, is it just asking that we have a list of critical tasks?
Yes, so if you look at your audit tool, section 2, 2.6, is there a list of identified critical tasks? So basically it says the company must have a list or method to identify or classify identified critical tasks. So just like the list that I showed you, it doesn't have to be anything crazy fancy. You're just going to put critical task list and then list those tasks that, again, maybe you don't do very often, have a high probability of injury or have known to cause injury or incident in the past.
Okay, and just to expand on that, Kara, another person came in, is do I need a practice and a procedure for all of my critical tasks, or just one or the other?
We are going to ask to see a procedure, a safe job procedure for each identified critical task. If you have a practice for it as well, that's fine, but it is required that you have a procedure for each critical task.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so let's just see where we're at here. Is there any way to prep for the audit that you would recommend?
Yeah, so the advisors can come out. We can do a manual review before the manual is submitted to the SCSA, and then we can also do a pre-audit check to see if there's any gaps in the program. If you are a company that is going for COR, I would recommend to do that no earlier than 4 months or so before the audit. That way, if there are gaps in the program, we have time to button those up before the auditors come in.
Absolutely.
And just going further with that, yeah, the advisor is obviously a great resource for that. But Kara showed us where the audit tool is right on our website. If you're in the process of taking that auditor training, the self-audit is another good way to evaluate your own company. So there's many options for you to explore your gaps in your program.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Steve. Okay. Do we have to review critical tasks more often than regular procedures?
So it is required that you review them annually at a minimum. Okay, so as an advisor, my advice to a company would be, it is better to go over that procedure during a toolbox talk, maybe more than once a year, than going over it post-incident.
And
That is
just
a really
to
good
think
point.
about that, and to think about that list itself too, right? Like maybe there's something missing from that critical task list, because part of that critical task list isn't just dangerous stuff you do. It's stuff that's dangerous because you don't do it that often. So because you don't do it that often, you don't think of that task until you're ready to do that task. So let's say you're talking about that, you realize that you don't have it on your critical task list because it's something that you don't do that often. So yes, so not just the procedure needs to be reviewed, but the critical task list itself should stay updated.
And just to stress, we always say it's a living, breathing document, right? This thing should change. You should be updating it regularly if you feel like it belongs in there, or maybe something can come out because you don't do it anymore. Whatever the case may be, definitely keeping this up to date is the important part. So is COR the same thing as COR? So we touched on this a little bit. Maybe Kara or Steve can explain the difference.
Sure. So again, our small employer certificate of recognition is for companies with 9 or fewer employees. And like I said before, the audit tools for COR and COR are very similar as far as the documentation portion goes. If you download the COR Audit, you'll see everything that's supposed to be in there, as opposed to if you download a COR Audit, there's going to be a few questions missing. For example, on the COR Audit, we have 3.1, 3.2, and then we skip to 3.6 because 3.3, 3.4, and 3.5 are observation and interview questions. But the documentation for both COR and COR are very, very much aligned.
And then training is very similar. 3 of the courses are the same as far as the training that's required. The only one would be the 4th, where in COR, Scott is required, and in COR, it's either WMIS or BTT would be the requirement there.
Awesome, thanks you guys. So we got more questions coming in. This person is asking, I run a painting company and we maybe sandblast once every 4 to 5 years. Just some small pieces. It's not dangerous. Do I need to have this labeled as a critical task?
Okay, can you repeat that first part again?
So this person runs a painting company and they maybe sandblast once every 4 to 5 years. Just some small pieces. They say it's not dangerous, but do they need to have this labeled as a critical task?
I would say you would, yes. You don't do it that often. You say just small pieces, but sometimes those are the most dangerous items that you have on site are those small pieces. So yes,
yeah.
I would highly recommend that you put that on your critical task list.
And the way I advise companies is that it's not that if it hits all 3 of those questions that Kara said, is it dangerous? Is it cause injury in the past? Is it something we only do every once in a while? If it hits any one of those questions, if it's a yes to any one of them, then just put it on your critical task list. Because if you don't do it very often, then your guys aren't familiar with it, right? So they might not know exactly how to protect themselves all the time.
And just to kind of toot our own horn, if you have something on the critical task list and you don't have a procedure for it, reach out to advisory services. We would be more than happy to help you with the layout of that, getting it all prepared and into your safety manual.
100%. You don't have to do any of this alone. So the next question that came in was, does every supervisor I employ are they required to do their proficiency for LSE? So I know we touched on this a little earlier, but maybe once more we can go over that.
I'll just go over real quick here. LSE, your supervisors are going to take it if you're going to be COR, COR, or if you just want them to have it, which is great to have. There is, after the 2-day course for Leadership for Safety Excellence, there is some homework, our proficiencies. The proficiencies have to be done by anybody who's going to be that COR employee. So if you're an owner and you're sending your employees or one of your employees to hold the 4 core classes that you're supposed to have before you can become COR, one of them is going to be LSE. That person must have their proficiencies in. They have 8 months. Your supervisors They don't. We just require that they have supervisor training, which is LSC. So they could take the 2-day course and just walk away and get their cert and be happy. But if you get them to do those proficiencies, let's just say if that one person does quit that was supposed to have their proficiencies in, you have a whole bunch of supervisors that have a LSC with proficiencies, which is one of the core classes. It just makes it easier so that if that one person does walk away, you only need to get somebody else trained up for 3 other classes, if you understand how that works. So not required, but a good idea to get them to do that homework.
Yeah.
And just to go further with that, you're going to find that these proficiencies you're going to want to naturally do these on site anyways. Like somebody's going to have a meeting at some point. Just put that person in charge, write the meeting down. You're going to have different sites. They're supervisors for a reason. They should be leading the charge in those proficiencies anyways. So.
Also, if you need to find the proficiency documentation, it is under the resources tab on our website.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. That's a great answer for that. So we have a few more questions coming in, and I know we're getting right to the end here, so I'll try and get to everyone's question. So this one is, what if I'm using a procedure and it's not safe and someone might get injured? Am I required to follow it anyway?
No, if you're on a job site and you're going over a procedure and you are doing that task and you don't think that those steps are correct or they're going to cause incident or injury, that's a good time to revise your procedure.
Yep. Perfect example. Just because it's written doesn't mean it's written in stone. Update it, change it, make it work for you.
Yeah, like that procedure could have been written some time ago and it worked for that moment. Now you have better tools, better regulations, different job site, like, your environment, the people you're working with, everything can affect how the job needs to be done. So always a good, if you're going into that sort of stuff, have your toolbox meeting, bring up that particular procedure. Somebody's going to say, you know what, that's no good anymore. And then you guys can figure it out from there on a better step.
So another person came in and said, who needs to be involved in review? I'm asking because I have an injured worker. I want to get back to work. Can I have them review everything on their own?
Yeah, if it's like, so if they're let's say they're in a return to work program, which I assume is what's happening. Absolutely, if they are able to go over that documentation and that's something that they can do as their return to work program, then that is a really good idea.
That's a really awesome idea, actually. So a few more questions before we get signed off. So this one is from a homeowner. So as a homeowner, with the recent wind blowing off of shingles, a buddy said that he can fix them for me. What do I need to know or have in place for this? I'm a little hesitant to have him go on the roof. What if he falls and hurts himself?
Okay, I can talk to this. You're a homeowner and you need some shingles fixed. That's awesome. Make sure you pick somebody who has a safety program that does go on your roof with a harness or some sort of a fall protection system in place so that they don't fall. See, there is a little bit of a responsibility as a homeowner to know that you've got a responsible person up there. Just saying, could you be in trouble as a homeowner if somebody fell off your roof that you hired? Maybe. I can't give you an absolute on that. But what I can tell you is if you cover your butt and you make sure that you pick a roofing company that does have a health and safety program, you should be fine. And all you got to do is look up and make sure that there's a fall protection system up on that roof of yours.
Don't be afraid to ask contractors about it. If they scoff or don't take it seriously, that's a pretty good indicator that they don't take it seriously, obviously. But just like anything, if somebody hurts themselves on your property, there is liability there. So being a homeowner and sort of not understanding the law isn't an offense of in court. So definitely do your due diligence, make sure whoever's going up there knows what they're doing, that they have something in place to make sure that they're going to be safe while they're up there and that they don't fall. Okay, so the next question that came in, another homeowner. So this person is building a cabin at the lake by themselves. What do they need for safety?
All right. Well, you're a homeowner, and if you're not hiring anybody and you're building it yourself, it is our suggestion that you follow the legislation. But the legislation is for occupations, people with jobs that are doing work. So you want the technical answer. There's no law abiding a homeowner building their own house to follow legislation if you don't have a business. You're just doing it yourself. But saying that, there is a reason why we have ledge. There is a reason why we have these rules. You should be following them, homeowner or not. If you work for a company, you own your own company, or you own your own house that you're building. Those safety things aren't a waste of time. They are very important. So it would still be my suggestion to follow all of what ledge has to say. Homeowner, business owner, doesn't matter.
And to take that one step further, agreed, like the minimum legislation is there for a reason, but to think that you're doing the entire thing by yourself, like you never need a hand lifting a wall or a truss or anything like that, you are going to have other people on site. Kudos to you if you can do the entire thing strictly on your own. But there's going to be, I'm sure, times where somebody else is going to be coming onto that job site, and it's not just about you, it's about everybody around you. It's about the next door neighbor that could fall into that open pit. So just really consider safety. It's not just that you're in the middle of nowhere and you're the only one you're thinking about.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And honestly, even if you're not a member, if you're a homeowner and you just don't know where to start with this, we have a document on our website that will you could use to help choose contractors. So it gives you just some information and questions to ask a contractor before you hire them about what they do for safety and things like that. And if you are a homeowner and you are doing this all by yourself, one, let us know how that goes, because that's a lot of work. And two, the advisors are here. They can, we do get calls from homeowners quite often, just asking basic questions about safety. So if you do have questions, you want to know what to do, what's the best practices, give us a call. You don't have to be a company. All right, so we're coming right at the end here. So we'll start to wrap it up. I'm sorry I didn't get to everyone's question. We have quite a few coming in. So the last thing I just want to mention before we sign off today is our Thursday episode. So this coming Thursday, we have a special guest from STARS Air Ambulance that's going to be there. So we really hope you can join us as well. We've actually changed the time to the Thursday webinar, so that will be from 12 to 1, so over the lunch hour. If you can join us, that would be great. Like I said, STARS Air Ambulance will be there, and we'll be asking questions of them and learning a bit more. So thanks again for joining us today, Tuesday. And the next Tuesday, we will have sections 5 to 7 of the audit tool. So join us again. For now, stay safe and stay healthy and stay home.